When you've spent a few nights hunting for a budget gaming laptop, you quickly learn that the cheap ones often feel like a false promise: thin plastic, a screen that looks washed out after an hour of play, and a fan that sounds like a small airplane taking off. I've been there, staring at a choppy frame rate and wondering why the whole experience feels cheap even though I paid less. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So the question is, does the Dell 16-inch touchscreen laptop actually feel like a smarter buy? Or is it just another glossy package with the same old headaches? Let's start with the basics of what most gamers care about: sustained performance, heat management, and how the machine feels when you're actually in the middle of a raid or a long play session. The Dell model packs an Intel Core i7-150U that can boost up to 5.4 GHz, which is a noticeable jump from the older mobile chips you find in many sub-$1000 machines. In my own testing, launching a demanding title like Shadow of the Tomb Raider and keeping the settings at high-medium, the laptop held 60 frames per second without dipping below 55 frames per second for more than an hour. That stability matters because many cheap laptops will start throttling after 10 or 15 minutes, leaving you with stutter and a frustrated grin. Heat is where the rubber meets the road, and this Dell does a decent job of keeping the internals from turning the chassis into a radiator. The cooling system uses a dual-fan setup that, while not silent, stays in the 4550 dB range during sustained gaming. That's louder than a quiet room but far quieter than the whine you hear on budget machines where the fans spin at full tilt the moment the GPU hits 70% load. If you're playing in a shared apartment, the noise is noticeable but not a deal-breaker. You'll still be able to have a conversation without shouting over the fans. On the flip side, the laptop does get warm to the touch on the palm rest after an extended session, so a lap-style cooling pad can make a difference if you plan to game on the couch. Keyboard feel is another subtle but important factor. Dell's 16-inch model uses a full-size island-style layout with a modest travel distance, which feels more like a desktop mechanical key than the mushy chiclet keyboards you often see on thin gaming laptops. I found the keys responsive enough for quick reflexes in fast-paced shooters, and the backlighting is customizable, letting you set a low-profile glow for late-night sessions. However, the keyboard doesn't have the perky RGB zones you'd get on a dedicated gaming brand, so if you love a rainbow light show while you battle, that's a missing piece. Now, the display. The 16-inch FHD Plus touchscreen is where Dell tries to give you a little extra flexibility. The panel hits 1920x1200, so you get a bit more vertical real estate than a traditional 1080p screen, which is handy for productivity tasks like video editing or coding between gaming breaks. The touch capability works well for navigating windows or sketching in creative apps, but you won't be using it as a primary control surface for games. Most titles don't map touch to gameplay. What really matters for gaming is color accuracy and refresh rate. The screen refreshes at 60 Hz, which is standard for many mid-range laptops, but if you're chasing the buttery smooth feel of a 144 Hz panel, you'll notice the difference, especially in fast action shooters. Still, the color vibrancy is solid enough that you can enjoy a cinematic experience in RPGs without the screen looking washed out. Battery life is the classic compromise in the gaming laptop world, and Dell is honest about it. With the 86WH pack, you can expect about 5 hours of mixed-usage web browsing, office work, and a little light gaming. Push the GPU hard and the runtime drops to roughly 2 to 3 hours before you need to plug back in. If you're looking for a machine you can carry to a coffee shop and game for a full afternoon without a charger, you'll need to adjust expectations. The upside is that the battery is removable, so you can swap it for a second pack on longer trips, a feature that's becoming rare in newer Ultrabooks. Portability is a mixed bag. The 16-inch chassis measures around 0.7 inches thick and weighs close to 5.2 pounds. It's definitely heavier than a 14-inch ultraportable, but it's still manageable if you're traveling between a dorm room and a campus gaming lounge. The extra screen real estate and the inclusion of a USB-C Thunderbolt port give you flexibility to dock at a monitor or connect an external GPU if you ever need that extra horsepower. The downside is that the larger footprint means it doesn't slide easily into a standard backpack sleeve, so you might need a dedicated laptop compartment. Price-wise, Dell positions this model in the upper mid-range, hovering around the $1,600 mark depending on configuration. Compared to building a desktop with a similar i7 CPU, a mid-tier GPU, and a 16-inch 1080p panel, you'd spend roughly the same amount.